guys, Coach Kelsey here with our continued series on the Enneagram. Throughout the summer, we're going to be having special guests, and I'm going to interview them, ask them questions about their experience as the number they are on the Enneagram. So this is the first episode of that, and I'm really excited. Today's guest is Haley Kruse, who actually played here at Empowered and now plays at the college level at Huntington University. And fun fact, two things. One, she's my sister, which makes this a lot of fun. And two, she's actually my player since I'm the coach at Huntington University. So we're gonna have a lot of fun. So thank you so much for being here and being our first guest.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So your number on the Enneagram is the 8, the challenger. And so again, just a quick review, a basic description. 8s are confident, confrontational, dominating, decisive, powerful, and willful. So my question for you is, how would you describe yourself, or do you relate to those characteristics?
I would say that I relate to those characteristics very well. I think that the confident and the driven and just being strong-willed is something I relate to every day. I think there may be some characteristics that come off very powerful and very maybe dominating, and I would say that I am not always like that.
Yes. Well, I have to admit right away, when you talked about being strong-willed, an image came to my mind. And the image is you as a little girl pinning me to the ground, and you were so strong at a young age, not only strong-willed, but physically strong, and I literally had to yell for help from Lily to come save me. So that's just a glimpse, of that at a young age. I don't see you pin people now, but when you were younger, we did see that. So the basic fear, not everybody's favorite thing to talk about when it comes to their number on the Enneagram, but the basic fear for an 8 is being harmed or controlled by others. What has been your experience with that?
I would say that my experience is probably different from someone who is a very strong 8. I would say that the fear of being controlled, I've experienced a little bit of, because of the way my mind works, is I think through things logically and then come up with a solution for them and go after that goal. And if there's anything that kind of hinders me from reaching a goal, that's where I am fearful of that, or that's where I've experienced that. The other one would be, I feel like a fear that I have experienced was the fear of being misunderstood as an 8, because everyone will think that we're confident and maybe a little intimidating, and I think that in reality, or at least for me, it's the opposite. We're friendly, we care for our people, and so I think that's where I've actually had that fear over the being harmed or being controlled.
Yes, I really appreciate you explaining that. And so would you say, that's something that you wish maybe more people understood about an 8?
Yeah, I would think that, because when people go through the Enneagram numbers, I think they come across 8s and say wow, they're very strong-willed people, or very intimidating, or maybe harsh. And then when I hear that, I'm like, well, it's the opposite. I say we're outgoing, we love our people. You want to be a friend with an 8 because they tend to protect their friends and things like that. And so that's where I differ from that scenario. Yes,
absolutely. And that basic desire of an 8 is to protect and to be in control of their own destiny, their life. And so what I'm hearing is that strong desire for protection. And one thing I truly believe about 8s is, yes, they want to protect themselves, but that also extends to their people, like you said. So maybe those moments where an 8 comes across strong-willed, or whatever it may be, powerful, you have to look at the motivation behind it, and that desire is to protect. So I think that's really neat that you're sharing that. So some key motivations for an 8. I'm gonna read off this list, and then I wanna just get your thoughts on it. So to be self-reliant, to prove their strength, to resist weakness, to be important in their world, to dominate the environment, and to stay in control of their situation. So one, do you relate to those key motivations? And then specifically, I want to know how you maybe see this on the volleyball court. What motivates you on the court, if that makes sense?
I would say that what motivates me is they say that 8s are confident in themselves, and that is true, and I have found myself strong in my values or beliefs or anything like that. I think what also helps motivate me is in volleyball, I think it helps me the most to also not only be confident in myself and abilities, but also to know that the coaches and teammates also have that same confidence in me. I think that might be a misperception of 8s, is that everyone thinks they're just fully confident, and I think that even though they may be confident in their abilities, that we also need to be reassured that other people also believe that. And I think that is very important for me to fully succeed, is as long as I know someone else is gonna back me up or also have the same confidence or have the same vision for me, I know then I can be fully confident and excel in that area.
Yeah, so for, me as a coach, to come to you and say, hey, I know this is what you're capable of, like I believe you can do what we're asking of you, that just then kind of ignites that confidence even deeper in you.
Yeah.
Which is really neat and important. I think throughout this whole Enneagram series, we've been talking about how we can apply this information, whether we are a player, whether we are a coach, whether we're a family member. And so I think it's so important as coaches for us to think about what are the numbers of my players on the team, and so therefore what do they need? And so I know that's something that you need, is to know that I have that confidence in you. So very good. So now we get to the fun part. We're going to talk about your strengths as an 8. Everybody loves this part. So some key strengths of an 8 include expressing themselves in every situation, acting quickly and decisively, effectively leading others to success, defending and protecting other people, and making fair and logical decisions. And so I really want to know, what would you consider to be one of your greatest strengths, and how has that been helpful in your life?
I would say that one of the greatest strengths I would say that I have that comes up more often than others maybe is the decisiveness. I think I'm able to think logically, and I don't think as much with emotion. I try to think logically about the situation or anything that I'm a part of and make my decision based off of that. And it's usually quick because I'll just process it and then go with that answer, go with that. And it's not like I'm rushing it because I'm thinking of it logically and not just going with a feeling or an emotion. And so I would say that is what I experience the most, is the decisiveness, but I also see the protecting of other people come up very frequently, is because if I have friends that maybe don't stand up for themselves or they are in a situation and need advice, I find them seeking my advice out and going to help them, and I enjoy that because I want to protect them, want them to thrive, and it goes back to me wanting them to think kind of the way I do. That way I can help them, or something I've experienced and like, oh, this solution works, let me help them because they're going through something similar. And so I find myself just wanting to protect and help and just do the best I can for them because I have that caring emotion that is tied to them.
Yes, I think every person, you said this earlier, every person needs an 8 as a friend. My lifelong best friend since kindergarten, Annie, she has, I don't know for certain that I can say, she is an 8, but I know that that's a number she's considered for herself. And so she has some of these traits, specifically that protection. And I can just think through the course of our friendship and how grateful I was to have that. I just need to take a moment to say, your decision-making ability, honestly, I am in awe of it. Coming from someone who does tend to include emotions in that process and tends to take a while to think over something, to verbally process it, I've always been amazed at your ability not only to make a quick decision, but it's a very thought out decision. You just did it very fast and were able to think about it logically. So from someone who doesn't necessarily possess that trait naturally, I very much so admire that in you.
Well, thanks.
Now I get to the vulnerable part.
Oh, yay.
Exciting. So we're gonna talk about I don't like to say weaknesses. I say areas of growth. Doesn't that sound better?
Yeah.
Okay, so some areas of growth for an 8. in general include that sometimes they can be perceived as intimidating, the tendency to disregard other people's opinions, difficulty following rules or orders, and taking charge when maybe it isn't their place. And for some reason, that one always makes me giggle a little bit. Because I think an 8 would say, no, that never happens because it is always my place to take charge. So that one just always makes me giggle. So my question, giving you the opportunity to be a little vulnerable here, which one of those areas of growth do you think you connect with the most and why?
Well, I would say that the one I have experienced would be the intimidating one, is because I've actually experienced it within volleyball, and that's usually where it comes out in, is people that I play with that didn't play with me before and then are playing with me now. We'll talk about, what was your first interaction or opinion of me or impression? And they would say, I thought you were kind of scary, or I was kind of intimidated by you. And I'm just like, why? And it would kind of result to the way I played is, one, they would say you just were really good. Or they would say that, it was just you were just looked intimidating or just serious. And that would kind of be a misperception that I would say is because my mindset in the game and playing the sport is very much, I'm just focused, I'm dialed in. And I think that can kind of be perceived as intimidating because I'm just focused on the event that's taking place or what's going on, because that's just how my mind works, is I'm gonna be focused on whatever situation I'm in. And so I think that kind of gets a misperception. I would say that people would play with me, and before they even played with me for a long period of time, they would say that you were just very intimidating, or I would have to then tell them I'm just really focused, and they would say, I know now, you're just so kind, you're very outgoing, all that stuff. It's just in the settings I am in that I need to focus or dial in a little more, it becomes perceived as intimidating.
Yes, well, I can't help but think of the example, Mason on our team, who we both dearly love. You forgot one thing that she found intimidating about you. And what was that?
I wore a headband.
You wore a headband, and that right there is the most intimidating thing you could do on the court.
Yes.
I just thought that was hilarious that she included that as part of why she thought you were intimidating. But I think you are hitting the nail on the head that sometimes there can be this perception of someone and how they compete on the court, when really, they're a very friendly person. They're just focused, they're just aggressive, whatever it may be.
I will say I got rid of that headband going into college.
That's right, you don't do the headband anymore.
I don't do it.
We did it for Mason, right?
Yeah.
For her. Well, this is one of my favorite elements to talk about within the Enneagram, is that every number reflects the character of God in some way. And for an 8 specifically, that is through God's power and his protection. And that is something that I evidently see in you as your sister. When it comes to that power, I think about how even from a very young age, I saw the natural leader that you are. And I think as you've grown, you've continued to be that leader, but have also incorporated this empathy, this relational value in connecting with the people you're leading. And I think that's the sweet spot of leadership, when you are able to lead intentionally, but also love your people well and protect them. And I've seen that protection in you too. Your people in your life are so blessed and lucky to have you, because you are going to protect them. You are going to tell them the truth. And they know it comes from a place of, she cares about me. And I know I've experienced that as your sister. I know your friends, your teammates have experienced that. And so I just think that's so beautiful to see in you. And so I feel like this is very accurate, that I can see God's, power and his protection coming through you, which is really neat. So let me ask you this, and I'm going a little rogue here, so bear with me, but this just came to my mind. How do you think as an 8, you might connect with God differently or in a unique way, or maybe what's a really important aspect of your relationship with him? Does that make sense?
Good question. I would say that the way I connect with him is almost because I think logically, I think that maybe differs from other people, is when I talk to him, it would be more about a logical situation, I guess. And also, it would be more maybe coming to him saying, hey, like this happened, or trying to think through things and maybe say like, this is how I thought about it, and just kind of try to connect like the way he would think. And I think that's how my mind works, is when people come to me for advice, I always try to put myself in their position. I try to put myself in their shoes, and I think maybe I do that with God, and I think that's what helps me be able to grow in that relationship in those areas, because I'm able to switch the view around and say, okay, if I'm looking in on this way or looking from this different perspective, what would the change be, or what would the solution be in their eyes, or just try to see things from different angles. And I think that's what is able to help me, because I'm already doing that with friends. They come to me and I'll switch it around and say, well, maybe I've never experienced it before, but I'm going to try my best to help you out. And I think I do that with God, where maybe I'm coming to him with something and then think, well, what does the Bible say? What's God going to tell me? And just try to switch it and then go with that.
Even in the moments we don't understand. You know, sometimes God works in ways where we can say, you know, I know the truth is that you are good and you have my best interests in mind. There may be times in our life where we say, I don't quite understand what you're doing here, but I'm hearing that you intentionally try to seek that out, like through what the word says, which I think is really neat. And it's what you want other people to do with you too. You know, you talked about how 8 sometimes can be a little misunderstood, and so there's that fear there for you. So I think that's neat that you're also seeking to do that in your relationship with God. And then can find that peace that no matter what, he understands you. You know, he knows your heart at the end of the day, which I think is really cool. Okay, next what we're gonna talk about is the fact that on the Enneagram, each number, they point to another number and take on those positive traits when they're growing and they're in a healthy state. But they also will point to a different number and embrace those negative characteristics when they're stressed or they're unhealthy or they're going through a hard time. Now, this is something kind of new. This is something that I haven't really talked about when it comes to the Enneagram throughout this series. So you get to be the guinea pig of having this initial conversation. So when an 8 is stressed, what they typically do is they take on the negative characteristics of a 5 on the Enneagram, which is the investigator. So what this would look like is withdrawing and disconnecting even more with their emotions. They may seem secretive and hypervigilant about betrayal, neglecting their self-care, and becoming more uncompromising than usual. So that's typically what it looks like when an 8 is stressed. I already see like a slight smile on your face. Do I need to even ask if you relate to that?
Let's speak on it.
Please speak on that. What's been your experience when you're stressed? How do you know when you're stressed?
I will say the tells I give for when I'm stressed or even upset is I tend to shut down and kind of turn inward, and that's the complete opposite of how I normally am. It's because I'm, all out and about, extroverted, things like that. So that is my tell for when I am stressed, and it's just a mindset where it's just kind of like high emotions, just getting taken in and just trying to also process, but it almost becomes a longer process because it's just very like emotions are kind of going at the logical mindset of it, and so everything kind of just shuts down and I just become quiet. And that's just the opposite, and so that's the key tell that I'm upset or anxious or stressed out.
I relate to that as well. And one thing I've noticed from my experience, and I'm curious if you experience this, sometimes it's unfortunate because if you're stressed and you maybe don't want someone to know you're struggling, it's like they can read you like a book. Because if you're typically outgoing and talkative and whatever it may be, and then all of a sudden you're feeling more stressed or overwhelmed or you're struggling, so you become a little more quieter, I've noticed that people are aware of that very quickly because it's easy to see or experience. And so on one hand, I'm grateful for it because then people can reach out and try to be helpful and encouraging. But on the other hand, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I was trying to hide that a little bit better, but it's so hard to do. So I can relate with that. So on the other side of things, when you are in a healthy state and you're growing, you'll start to take on those positive traits of a 2, which is the helper. So this would mean that you're gonna embrace empathy, compassion, some vulnerability, and that you're gonna actually nurture not only other people and your relationships, but also yourself. So what do you enjoy about pointing to a 2 in growth?
Yeah, I can tell that when I point to a 2 in growth is because that is when I'm enjoying spending time with people, but also when it's them coming to me for advice or anything. And it doesn't have to be like they're in a tough situation either. It could be very positive and we just talk about it. And that's where I see those 2 traits come out, is because I'm wanting to help them, take care of them, protect them. And I also see that come out even when on the volleyball court too, is I'm gonna help them try to succeed as much as they can. Maybe if they are just in a little rut, I want them to succeed, so I'm gonna help them, encourage them. And I see those 2 traits come out. It's just I start taking care of my people and you know, protecting them or trying to guide them through something and just help them.
Absolutely. You know, you're not only valuing, you know, your personal success, like you value the success of other people, and that brings you, you know, joy to be able to help somebody else do that, achieve their goals, which is really neat. So another new concept that we're going to touch on is this idea of a wing number. So I know you're familiar with this, but on the Enneagram, you have the 9 numbers, and whatever number you are, the number that comes right before or right after your number, one of those is gonna be your wing. So for example, you know, someone's a 5, they're either a wing 4 or a wing 6. For you as an 8, you're either a wing 9 or a wing 7. And what this means is, it's kind of like your secondary number. You're just gonna take on some additional traits of that wing number accompanied with being an 8. So for you, again, that choice is either a wing 7, which is the enthusiast, or a wing 9, which is the peacemaker. Which wing are you, and how do you see that in your personality?
I would say, well, I know that I'm a wing 7. One of the reasons is because the wing 9 is very kind of anti-conflict, and as an 8, I'm not scared to confront people or anything like that. So that's where the wing 7 comes to. But also with the wing 7, it is where my extrovertness comes out, where I'm outgoing. I want to have fun with people. I want to be active and wanting to be doing something all the time, and that's what they are. They're the adventurer. They want to seek out new things, and that's where I tend to lie, and that's where I go when I'm feeling good and all that stuff. And so that's where I tend to go, and that's just what I am. It's just what I like to seek out is fun, you know, doing active things together, things like that.
So as an 8, you want to lead people to be successful and having fun. Is the moral of the story. I love that. One thing I'm very jealous of, and you know this, is that 8s have the most energy out of any number on the Enneagram, and that is something I've always been so jealous of, because I want to have the most energy out of every number on the Enneagram. I think I'm like, as a 1, I'm like 2nd or something like that. So I imagine also being an 8 wing 7, you know, enthusiasts have a lot of energy too. I'm sure that just makes you one big ball of energy, which good for you. Well, very good. Well, I want to wrap this up with a couple fun questions, okay? So my first one is, how can someone love and support you the best as an 8? So what do you need from other people?
I would say that people will think that, kind of how I talked about before, that 8s are very confident, and I think some people may think, well then okay, they don't need as much maybe love because they have it within themselves already. And I think that's another misperception, is because I think the way I feel most loved or most motivated is kind of what we touched base on before, was that I may have confidence in my abilities, let's just say for volleyball, but I also need to know that my teammates or my coaches also have that same confidence, and that makes me feel loved and motivated, is because now that I know that my coaches have confidence in me and have expressed that to me, I'm able to expand my abilities and not kind of stay in a box because I'm worried about making a mistake or something like that. As long as I know they have my back, then I can fully expand in that range and grow and try to excel in whatever area it is. So even in volleyball and outside of it too, is just feeling that reassurance, kind of just the positive affirmation is. And I think some people may refrain from it because they're like, oh, they're an 8, like they don't need it, they're confident. But that's what I, as an 8, is what I need, is I need that positive affirmation, you know, telling me I am on the right track. Just kind of being that second opinion.
Yes, and it sounds like that then is very freeing for you on the court or in life. Okay, last fun question. I want to know, what is a moment where maybe people in your life would say like, yep, like she's an 8, or like that's an 8 move right there. You know what I mean? Kind of like something lighthearted or funny, where it's like maybe even what people like stereotypically think of as an 8, where that just shines through and somebody in your life could point to and be like, yep, that's an 8 moment right there.
I would say that, maybe that when I am talking a lot to someone, or kind of just maybe telling someone how it is.
Yes.
Because of the logical thinking. And I think they would say like, oh, like, yeah, that's an 8. It's because I'm just kind of being straight up with them.
Yes.
I'm not going to candy coat anything. I'm just going to be honest with them.
Yes.
But also in a loving way.
Right. Well, and again, I think that goes back to how it's valuable to know you're going to speak the truth. And that ends up building a lot of trust in relationships. If somebody knows they're going to get the truth from you, even if it's hard to hear. And like you said, there's not really this fear of confrontation. So funny, my pastor, he's an 8 on the Enneagram, and the other day in our service, he literally said, he was like, I know a lot of people don't like confrontation or are afraid of it. I like it, but I know most of you don't. And I just laughed, and I thought of you and just your ability to say, you know, no, if something needs confronted, I'll go do it. I'm not worried to do that. And I think that's a strength.
Yeah, I think it goes back to also me wanting to be understood and known. That way it doesn't come off in a poor way.
Yes.
And so I think that's why that fear of being misunderstood comes up, is because I'm going to tell you how it is, but in a loving way, and I need you to know it's loving and caring.
Yes, absolutely. Well, very good. We've covered a lot of info today. I feel like we've gotten to not only understand the 8 more, but also get to know you better. And I think it's important to note that not all 8s are even going to look the exact same. If we want to do an even deeper dive into the Enneagram, there are subtypes of each number. We're not going to get into that today. That would be information overload, but I just think it's important to note that, you know, so somebody who's watching may say, oh, I'm an 8 and I relate to that. Oh, I'm a little different when it comes to this. And it doesn't mean that they're not an 8 or you're not an 8. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. You know, we're not all going to fit perfectly into a box. We're all created uniquely and beautifully. So thank you so much for your time and sharing this info with us. And be sure to join us next time when we do another fun interview with someone. It'll be a surprise guest, and we will take a deeper dive into what their number is and learn more about them. So be sure to join us next time.